Welcome to another episode of the 715 Green and Gold Tailgate Podcast, a part of the Man Cave Podcast. Big thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to the 715 Green and Gold Tailgate Podcast and also the Man Cave Podcast. Dan here, and well, let's jump right into it. We're going to talk some Packers because kind of a busy day yesterday in terms of Green Bay and such. So we know who the new defensive line coach is. We know who the new quarterbacks coach is, and now Green Bay will be looking for a new linebackers coach. Let's start off with the new coaches. You know, quarterbacks coach, nothing. I don't think we don't need to really deep dive into that one that much because it's Sean Mannion. We knew it was probably going to be Sean Mannion, who was hired last year as an offensive assistant, and it just kind of felt like, oh, Tom Clement's getting up there in experience and age. Could this be like an on-the-job training? And then, you know, when he calls it a career, Sean Mannion, you know, maybe just the perfect promotion there, and that's how it worked out. And I think it will help him that Luke Getsy is going to be on the staff. Luke Getsy, a former quarterbacks coach himself, along with a former wide receivers coach and two-time offensive coordinator. So he still has, you know, some veteran coaches on to kind of lean on a little bit with his first year on the job as quarterbacks coach. So I don't think that was a big surprise for many. The one that a lot of Packers fans were kind of curious and interested about was who's going to be this defensive line coach, because for one, it was the only firing on this coaching staff, at least that we know of right now, unless one kind of flew under the radar. But it was the only firing, and so and it wasn't a surprise either, because I think a lot of Packers fans, if there was a big gripe from this year or big complaints, was the defensive line play. And so it just felt like, okay, yeah, that moves makes sense. And then we started to hear about Casey Rogers from Tampa. You know, Eric Washington, former defense coordinator with the Bears, longtime defensive line coach too. I think he was a defense coordinator for the Panthers in that. And then the Jets defensive line coach, so Robert Saleh connection, but he went to Dallas. And then Packers fan, after Casey Rogers was signed up and Aaron was signed up, White Cotton was signed up, it's like, who is Green Bay going to get? Running out of guys. And lo and behold, it's a dude that spent last year as a defensive coordinator for the Patriots, but has been with the Patriots organization for 8 years. Still, he's only 35 years old too. But the Packers apparently hiring DeMarcus Covington as defensive line coach. So a position coach, we don't necessarily a lot of times pay a lot of attention to position coaches and such, but I think given we saw the improvements from the defense this year, but the biggest complaint from a lot of Packers fans from this past year was pass rush and, you know, maybe the play from the defensive line. I was like, okay, we got to get somebody that can maybe get the most out of these guys here, because we've got money invested in Kenny Clark and Rashawn Gary, you know, draft picks and Devontae Wyatt and Lucas Van Ness. So Packers going with DeMarcus Covington. Again, spent last year as defensive coordinator for the Patriots, but years before that, spent a few years as a defensive line coach and outside linebackers coach. This is from Bill Huber from SI.com. And some quotes from him back when he was first promoted as defensive coordinator for the Patriots, and some quotes from his players and such. This was from Covington when he was promoted to defensive coordinator. Said, when you turn on the tape, what we want to see is a physical team, a team that plays with good discipline and fundamentals, and a team that attacks the football and takes it away from the opponent. That's what we were looking for from our defense, and a team that goes out there and plays together and for one another. That type of togetherness is what we're really looking for. Should also note here, too, as Bill noted in his piece, so every year Tom Pelissero from the NFL Network puts together a list of like up-and-coming coaches, you know, to kind of like a watch list. And he was listed on there twice. And he did have experience being defensive coordinator last year at the Senior Bowl as well. These were some other quotes from his former players and such. Dietrich Wise, he's a veteran defensive end who spent 8 seasons in New England, said, DeMarcus Covington is a very intelligent coach, being able to read offenses, and he's always been able to break down other teams to be prepared for them. He's a very intelligent coach, very passionate coach, loves to give speeches to the team and get everybody fired up. He brings the best out of guys when he speaks, very passionate, not very loud, but when he does speak, his voice is heard. He also said that he has a great understanding of the entire defense and scheme. He can coach defensive line, linebackers, and defensive backs. He sees the big picture. He's a good players coach and can control the room. Another quote. This was from Christian Barrymore. The man's got the wisdom. He has the mentality, and he knows a lot. He's a really smart coach. I think he does have a chance to be a head coach one day. So there's just a couple quotes. Again, I'm not going to pretend like I know everything about Covington. And a lot of us don't know a whole lot about Covington. What we do know is that, okay, New England hasn't been good the last couple of years, so we focus on that. And we focus a lot on, defensive numbers and statistics, especially since he was the defensive coordinator last year for New England. Like, oh, gosh, they were really bad in a lot of these categories. New England was just a bad team overall and lacking a lot of talents and depth. So I don't want to, just assume that he's a poor hire or he's not going to work out because of New England as a team last year and the players that they had. But I will say the thing that intrigues me the most about DeMarcus Covington, and again, maybe this is just me kind of trying to find something positive in this thing, but the thing that intrigues me with him is his first year. I shouldn't say his first year. It was actually his third year. Yeah, because 2017-18, he was a coaching assistant. 19, he was promoted to outside linebackers coach. And then 2020 to 2023, moved to defensive line coach. The thing is, though, when he was defensive line coach, he had guys that he was coaching at defensive line that were also former 3-4 edge rushers, outside linebackers and such, or guys that would fit in a 3-4 system as edge rushers, outside linebackers. And that's the part that intrigues me with this, because you look at Green Bay, right? I mean, you look at Green Bay and you're like, well, they've got those same type of players, right? I mean, you go to a couple of years ago when they were a 3-4, and you had Rashawn Gary standing up and Lucas Van Ness in his rookie year standing up, and then you have them putting their hands, in the dirt there. So the fact that he's got a little bit of experience working with guys who initially were standing up or edge rushers, and then trying to incorporate them into defensive linemen and such, like one guy that he worked with quite a bit. He's not there anymore with the Patriots, but Matthew Judon, remember him? So he's worked with other stand-up players, defensive ends, outside linebackers and such. So that's the part that intrigues me. It intrigues me in a way like, okay, can he help maybe take these guys? If there was a little bit of an adjustment for like a Lucas Van Ness or a Rashawn Gary, if there was a little bit of adjustment from standing up, 2-point stance, and then you're transitioning into a 4-3 defensive end, you've got a defensive line coach that has experience with that. He has some experience with that. And that's what intrigues me with this, is that can he help? Because that ultimately his job's going to be, can he get Kenny Clark playing at a high level, Rashawn Gary playing at a high level. Get Lucas Van Ness playing at a high level. Getting the most out of those guys. Can he do that? That's his job. And that's what intrigues me a little bit with Covington coming in here, because he has that experience of working with guys that maybe, a little outside linebacker, defensive end, core, relationship. They're trying to getting those guys adjusted to that, or switching kind of positions. You know what I'm getting, that sort of thing. Getting those outside linebackers to play defensive ends and such, and just having that experience and helping transition those guys to those certain type of positions. And you look at some of the defensive linemen that he has coached, when he was over with New England, former Packer at one time, Lawrence Guy, he's on there too. We mentioned Christian Barrymore and such. So, again, I don't want to come to a conclusion off this hiring based off of, where the Patriots ranked in some categories and such last year when he was a defensive coordinator, just because of how bad they were all over. And that was a talent problem when it comes to the Patriots and such. And it's great we got these quotes from former players and such. It's like, cool, all right, awesome. We don't know how it's going to work out. We don't know how it's going to play out until games actually start and they're back on the field and such, and we see improvement from these players and such. But again, the thing that intrigues me the most is him being able to, have that experience where he was working with outside linebackers, helping them transition to defensive ends, and working with that. Can that help a guy like a Rashawn Gary? Can that help a guy like a Lucas Van Ness? And his experience working with, some defensive tackles like a Christian Barrymore. Christian Barrymore, 8.5 sacks, 1 year. Can he help Kenny Clark develop into a dominant 4-3 defensive tackle? Can he get this group, to get after the quarterback and put pressure using 4? We know that's the goal. Matt LaFleur has talked about it after the season. Jeff Hafley has talked about it. Got to get pressure with 4. This is why I think a lot of fans were looking at this position and looking at this job as like, we've got to get this one. We got to hit it. And is it the sexiest pick? No, it's not. It's probably not the sexiest pick for a lot of people out there. But let's see it play out. Let's see how it works out. The thing, though, so looked like for a hot minute yesterday, okay, Green Bay's got their coaching staff all set and done. It's all in place, ready to go. Here we go. Anthony Campanile, though, he had interviewed for the Jaguars defensive coordinator job earlier in the week. And last year he interviewed for the Giants defensive coordinator job before ultimately going to Green Bay. And him and Jeff Hafley have a friendship. They'd known each other for a long time. And when, Hafley was hired and then Campanile was hired, they kind of talked about they'd always wanted to kind of work with each other and work with each other for a few years. Well, that's only lasted a year, as Campanile is now going to the Jaguars as the defensive coordinator position. So Green Bay now will be looking for a new linebackers coach. Now, again, could they perhaps look within their own staff and maybe, promote somebody out there? Possibly. They could. Or maybe they're looking from the outside in again. I will say, I think this is a big loss for this defense. I think it's a big loss for this linebacking group. I look at this as I think it's a big loss for the development of Edgerrin Cooper. I mean, Edgerrin Cooper in his rookie year, to me, should be a Defensive Rookie of the Year finalist. I thought you saw some strides from Quay Walker this year. And I think this is going to be I think it's a big loss for the development of those two really good linebackers. Or Edgerrin Cooper, the arrow's trending upward. And I still think there's something there for Quay Walker. He's got the intangibles. He's got the physical traits. He's got all this stuff. And I just thought that at Campanile, maybe another year, a couple years with Quay Walker, it would have been interesting to see if there was continued growth from a guy like Quay Walker, and then just continued growth with Edgerrin Cooper coming off of a very good rookie season. So I think it's a big loss in terms of the development of those linebackers. Now, the in-house option could be Sean Duggan. He's right now just a defensive assistant, but he came over with Jeff Hafley, where he coached linebackers all 4 years, was also co-defensive coordinator in 2023. So maybe there's, a natural promotion there, or maybe there's a different linebacker coach out there. I've got to imagine Green Bay might be casting a net, probably doing some interviews, trying to, find the best candidate available, because here's the thing too. They could have just easily, for their defensive line coach, could have just easily promoted their assistant defensive line coach that they already had on roster that had worked with Jeff Hafley in college. They didn't do that, though. They went outside and brought somebody else in. They casted a net to find the best, in their opinion, the best coach that they were looking for. So I don't think it's an automatic conclusion that they're just going to promote one of their assistants to that job, because they could have done that for defensive line, and they didn't do that. But I do think it's, again, it's. I was disappointed to see that. I mean, good for the guy, good for Campanile getting a shot as a defensive coordinator. That's cool, that's great. But just me being selfish as a Packers person, it's like, dang it. Because I wanted that guy to stick around. I think, when he was hired last year, there was quite a bit of enthusiasm and excitement for Packers fans. And one was because if you watched Hard Knocks when he was with the Lions, you probably knew him. I mean, that's a guy that is very emotional and very passionate and is very fiery. And I think that's what got a lot of Packers fans excited and pumped up about him coming over to Green Bay. But I think you saw in 1 year the impact that he had on a rookie linebacker in Edgerrin Cooper. That's got everybody excited. And we saw, I think, some growth from Quay Walker this year. And you would have just liked to have seen that maybe continue to grow a little bit. It's like the quarterback that has to go through a different offensive coordinator every year. And it's probably not the greatest example, but I think it's similar in that aspect. Like, okay, there's going to be a new voice coming in. Maybe some different philosophies, a little bit of a different mentality and such. So I think now this is a big hire. I think this is a big hire for LaFleur, for Jeff Hafley to find a linebackers coach that could come in and take Edgerrin Cooper, what he did his rookie year, and continue to grow from that, continue to get better. What's the next step? What's the next thing in his growth? How can you take Edgerrin Cooper and make him into one of the better linebackers in the league? How can you take Quay Walker, who Xavier McKinney thinks is going to eventually be the best linebacker in football because of all the different things he can do? How do you take Quay Walker? How do you take the positives that he had from this year and continue to make him better? How do you take those two linebackers and elevate their game another level? And assuming they get another linebacker, if you do the 4-3 base defense, maybe it's a rookie. How do you take that rookie and get him off to a fast start and get him off to a good start and mold him into a solid linebacker for this team? Especially when it comes to stopping the run here, too, because Anthony Campanile was a part of the run game coordinator and slowing down the run and stopping the run. So defensive line coach was a big hire for Packers fans. Curious to see who it's going to be. Now we're back to linebackers coach. Curious to see how that one plays out. Who that person's going to be.